Look pretty beefy in the shirt. It's nice.
The flannel is great for the thickiness, like.
When you're packing.
I hope people can hear us. We look very dark on the screen over there, but I think it's just that screen over there.
No, it looks dark in that one too. Is it on auto or is it on video mode?
It's always on video for the live streams.
So it can't be on auto.
No.
Could you change the ISO thing?
We can. Oh yeah, it is dark, isn't it?
Oh, hey.
You need to give me some real time on this thing.
Wait, let me get up my laptop so we have an honest representation.
Oh, we were at a minus.
Go on. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Stop.
We good?
Yeah, the cameras, level the camera as well. It's
Give me some feedback.
Right hand side down.
Okay.
You should be able to bring up if you press the display, it'll bring up the level. Yeah, that one, yeah. That's not level, is it?
It is, yeah.
Is anyone getting vertigo from this not being level? 7, hello from Italy. How are we doing? How's she hanging? Hello. Not training related. How did you two meet Start Sika? We met in college and started Sika because we both wanted to make more money. If you go back and if you go onto Sika Strength SoundCloud or Spotify, and if you go way back and listen to, I think the first or second episode, we'll kind of talk through the full episode of kind of how we met. It was probably closer at the time. So that's like a synopsis. Basically, we just met. We wanted to do something, and it was originally going to be supplements. We wanted to do ketones at the time, and we kind of just were like, oh, we were both coaching our coaches. We both know a lot about training. We think we can bring something to people that's not currently on the market, our own particular flavor. And here we are 6 years later. And
how the time has flown.
How the time has fickly flown. And
I came across that big box of ketone salts in my garage the other day.
So we got ketones from a supplier. So you couldn't get ketones in Europe at the time. And we got them from a supplier from China, as most things want to do. And they were like, oh, we can't label these as ketones when we're leaving the country. We're just going to call them Cyclone A and Cyclone B. Obviously, we're going to get things tested, but we got the thing, and there's just massive bag, and customs rang us, and they're like, lads,
a big bag of white powder here. It's,
what the fuck is this?
Foil wrapped.
Yeah, what is this? We're like, oh, that's just ketones. That is not cocaine.
They were labeled polyol A and polyol B, wasn't it?
Cyclone, yeah, nice Cyclone.
They tasted like ass.
Was it those ones or the other supplier?
Real salty ass.
Yeah. Thank God, because see, the initial literature on ketones was that it did something, and now I think the literature is like not as like convincing, but it's
Tom Miller, regular contributor. Hope you're extremely well. App is a goddamn thing of beauty. Cannot get over it. Thanks very much, Sam. I think both myself and Owen at the moment are at the point with the app where we've looked at it for hundreds and hundreds of hours. So every time I open it now, I'm like, oh, why did we think that would be good?
No. Oh, no. Yeah, it's hard to know when you look at something for so much. You're just like, I don't even know anymore what's going on.
Yeah. Backy says hi. Hi, Backy. Spencer O'Neill says, good morning, coaches. Is there a difference between hanging muscle snatch and muscle snatch from the floor? Yeah, so one of the big things with the muscle snatch, obviously, is trying to get the correct amount of hips forward versus shoulders back. Obviously, we use muscle snatch a lot to get people to continue that vertical pull through without having the kind of need to drop under. I personally prefer people to do no contact muscle snatches, because I think contact muscle snatches lead to a lot of hip smash, a lot of shoulders back, and therein lies the issue. But the big thing with the hanging variation is that you tend to be able to fix that issue a small bit quicker. The variation from the floor is definitely a kind of progression for most people. So most people, if we're coaching them, we'll bring in the muscle snatch for a reason. Maybe that's or a no contact muscle snatch to fix overly smashy hips. Maybe it's a standard muscle snatch to get people to continue pulling upwards after they've made contact. And usually we go for the hanging variation first to kind of limit the amount of variables that's going to happen, limit the amount of things that can go wrong. And then once we've done that and brought in the hang variation, then we can sneak it down a bit, bring it to a low hang, bring it to a mid shin, bring it to the floor, wherever. So the one from the floor, you do get a bit more speed and a bit more momentum, but if you're using it to fix a technical error, which a lot of the time we are, then the hanging variation tends to be a small bit better, and then you gradually move it down. But if you're going for big, massive, big, heavy muscle snatches from the floor, you'll get more. AM says, loving the podcast. Also, hey, Dara, why do really strong people like us have bad eyesight? I have bad eyesight because my parents have bad eyesight.
Strong people like us.
Strong people like us. That's just what he's talking about. Just strong people like us. Me and AM. Andy Moran. Me and Andy Moran. Yeah, to be honest, I'm really just done with contact lenses. I used to wear contacts every single day in school. And then I stopped wearing contacts quite so much and started wearing glasses more. But now for shooting, I have to wear contacts. So that's 3 times a week, kind of for 6 months of the year, I have to wear contacts. Obviously, I don't wear them in jiu-jitsu because they get popped out, but I really want laser eye surgery.
Maybe all the strength in your back is like compressing your brain and you just can't see
Maybe all the lack of strength in my quads has left my eyes fall forward.
NMC, can you message us, NMC? Just reach out to us, if you contact form or email us, and we can get back to you and see who you are specifically, and we'll get it sorted.
Taiwaz Tim says, cheers for the autumnal Appalachian, or from the autumnal Appalachian Mountains. Oh, I bet it's amazing over there now. We love you, lads. I'm getting my Sikh-san passport soon. Until then, any thoughts on heavy snatch press, stroke, squat complexes? Snatch, press, stroke, squat complexes.
Is that like a SATS press?
Or maybe snatch plus behind the neck snatch, push press plus overhead squat.
Maybe, yeah.
I like them. I like them for the reason that a lot of people are really weak in their overhead position, and holding that position at heavier weights tends to be an issue. A lot of the time we spend so much time trying to perfect the first and second pull, and so much time working on our timing that we forget weightlifting is very much about lifting weights and holding them over our heads. And so that overhead position becomes a bit weaker. Same with people in the jerk. Their strict press can be terrible oftentimes, and they're wondering why their jerk, why their lockout is a bit sloppy, or why they get soft elbows when they're trying to bring together their feet. Being stronger is better in those complexes are actually really good. See a lot of them in the weightlifting 2.0. Column, we need to get back to you about 1-to-1. Rakifa says, hello from South Africa. Rakifa, I assume you're floating on air following your World Cup performance. Hey Miles says, when are we getting another 500-pound squat and 5-minute mile attempt? If it's happening, it's happening. We are going to get after it, as in my left and right foot. Yeah, we're going to attempt it again.
When's it happening?
When is it happening?
Give the people what they want.
The end of this year, towards the start of next year, it'll be happening. Training will start again.
Yeah, you'll start training, not
yeah. The actual attempt will be this mid to late spring of next year. I have a couple of weddings in March, so I'd like to have a crack. No, sorry, May. A few weddings in May.
What have the weddings got to do with it?
Not being in great training shape and being out of the country.
Do you want to do it after them?
No, before them.
The March is spring, though. It's not late spring, is it? When are you planning?
Do you know the Irish seasons are different from the normally international hell seasons? Do you know that?
Yeah. We're in November now.
So we're going to go November, December, January, February, March.
Want to get training, buddy?
Yeah.
You want to get after it, buddy?
Yeah,
brother.
Dragging deer really isn't enough high intensity training.
No, it's not.
Josh said, sup lads, what's the big difference between RTA 1 and 2? I actually picked RTA 1 again in the app. Lol. So Josh, in that case, pop us over an email with the email address you use to get the app. we'll reissue your token. You can get RTA 2.0. There's a couple of differences. So our tagline is like more volume, more accessories, and bigger PBs. But the first thing is the RTA 2 is longer. So it's a good few weeks longer than the original 8 weeks. The second thing is you've more volume at the start, and we kind of peak the volume, if you get what I mean. In the first iteration of the RTA, you've a little bolus of volume at the start that immediately kind of tapers down after 3 weeks. In the case of the RTA 2, you have volume and then you have volume PBs. So you have an actual stage of volume training, which is really, really valuable. So that's the first thing. The second thing then is that you have more accessory work. So obviously everyone who ran the RTA 1 will have seen most of the accessories are kind of done within 15 to 20 minutes, and most of them have one heavier or more difficult day per week than the other. In the RTA 2, you have 2 full sessions of accessories. So day 1 and day 2 have 2 full blocks of accessories following the squat work. So it is more accessory work. Definitely, like we've had thousands of people run the RTA 1. And so we didn't need to change a lot of the things. We understood what worked very well. And we understood where people kind of fell down or where people might need a bit more work. And that's basically what we added into RTA 2.
Yeah. So one of the things is, you can't compress as much progress into as short a time frame again. So the 8 weeks was very, very intense. And, what people needed and wanted for that particular squat program was the big focus on the squat. And then you compress lots of intense training and you do some aggressive jumps into that because, assuming you're in that sub 180 category, you can make bigger jumps because while the relative weights may be heavier or lower, depending, absolute weights have particular values to them in particular fields, regardless of your body weight to a certain extent, if you're within that normal area of the bell curve. So once you've done that a couple of times, once you've run the RTA a few times, you do need to extend that time period out a little bit. You can't be as aggressive because your weights are heavier. So it is more productive if you can draw it out, that training a little bit, get more meaningful volume in before you go for the big 1RM at the end. So that's one of the big benefits of the RTA 2.0. Gamma Day said, hey fellas, thoughts on periodizing high volume versus high weight on back squat? So I think I know what you're talking about. It's just a nitpick. That wouldn't be the correct use of the word periodizing. I suppose you'd be looking at like progressing. When it comes to periodization, we reference the entire training system as a whole. So that's kind of one of the things where sometimes people get confused with periodizing or periodization. Periodization is like how you look at a training system and progress it, or it's a particular means of progressing it in terms of blocks. So when you say that, I assume you mean, do you start with high volume and keep the weight the same, or is it do you start with high weight and change the volume then? So thoughts on periodizing high volume versus high weight on the back squat.
The manipulation of volume is something that we do quite often, but it's quite subtle. And most of the time you see manipulation of volume, it is quite subtle. So the standard manipulation of volume is that X, the manipulation of volume versus intensity. As you start a training program, your volume is very high and it slowly drops down. And as you start a training program, your intensity is quite low and it gradually comes up. What you'll find a lot of the time when you look at kind of training programs with a bit more going on and not just some kind of random free stuff or some old training programs, you'll see that it's not necessarily a straight line going all the way down with your volume. Most of the time you'll see these little bumps and then it will drop, and then you'll see these little bumps again and then it will drop. So to give a real quick example, let's say somebody's starting off with 3 sets of 3 in the back squat. You could manipulate volume there by going 5 sets of 3, then 3 sets of 5, then 5 sets of 5. And what you have is you have one increase, no increase, one increase again. And across all of those jumps, you might have 0 increase in intensity or weight, then a slight increase in intensity or weight, then 0 increase in intensity or weight again. And your volume load, the thing we're always looking at in training, sets by reps by weight, is constantly going up. So you're going from 3 sets of 3 to 5 sets of 3. So you have a clear increase in volume. Then you go from 5 sets of 3 to 3 sets of 5, 0 increase in volume, but you have an increase in inter-set intensity. But what you might do on that week is bump the weight up by 5 kilos or something along those lines. Or you mightn't bump the weight up at all because 3 sets of 5 might actually be more difficult for you than 5 sets of 3. And then on the fourth week, you clearly have an increase in volume again on 5x5. So people do manipulate volume all the time. I get what you mean by periodize. Periodizing will be kind of more in terms of periodizing macro cycles of training rather than innately small micro cycles.
So Mitch said thoughts on training front squat for carryover to back squat. So the front squat has basically zero carryover onto the back squat. So there is the basic initial step into the process is that you're doing some squatting with weight, so it's going to have some effect on the back squat, but it's really not meaningful. The back squat is a huge carryover on the front squat, so one of the easiest ways to increase your front squat is to first increase your back squat, which is simpler or more straightforward usually, or you can get more bang for your buck in terms of total weight. And then when it comes to the front squat, you practice that front squat and it will go up accordingly, and in a very few cases will that not be effective way of doing that. However, it doesn't really work going back the other direction. The front squat is a marginally useful assistance work for the back squat. If you're low bar back squatting, for example, one of the prime go-to assistance exercises is the high bar back squat. Then potentially something like bell squats, for example, are another great addition. But when it comes to the front squat to back squat impact, the front squat's just not that great, or very, very little use to it for the back squat. So when it comes to that, I wouldn't really be looking at it as the front squat as assistance. To be honest with you, the front squat or the back squat doesn't really need anything to carry over. Usually when we're looking for assistance work, we're looking for quality of movement, which hopefully allows you to do better quality back squats, which hopefully allows you then to back squat more and heavier more frequently, or hit the requisite weights that you need to hit. But there's very few exercises once you get to a certain stage of proficiency and training experience where this assistant exercise will improve your 1RM. Just once you get strong enough to a certain level, you just don't do things like that. You don't go, I increased my barbell side bends 20 kilos, my back squat went up. It just doesn't really happen like that. It happens when you're newer in training, your basis, your attributes, your general attributes are so low that any kind of training improves them, and then any kind of improvement in that will bring up that 1RM, the kind of rising tide lifts all boats aspect, which is useful. But the front squat just doesn't really do much for the back squat in that regard.
Banana and bread emoji says question regarding squat and deadlift. Number one, if my squat is greater than my deadlift, what's the most likely culprit? Number two, after heavy squats, my tendons near. Okay, so we'll have a look at that after. So number one, if my squat is heavier than my deadlift, what's my most likely culprit? Usually it's two things, and it's usually the first one of a horrendously weak back. So some people, through what they've done previously through other sports or through their kind of development or through their childhood and adolescence, might not have been lifting things too often, or mightn't have been incredibly active. And in that case, their backs tend to be very, very weak. And you'll see them being able to hit squat positions because they mightn't have any inherent tightness around any of the joints. But the problem then comes when they go to lift something off the floor, and that kind of amount of leverage that's being placed on the back becomes an issue. In many cases, people like this will have kind of mediocre squat strength, so maybe intermediate level squat strength, a very, very poor conventional deadlift strength. And in those cases, you see a lot of them opting for sumo deadlifting, because that angle of inclination isn't the same on the back. And so when they're enabled to be a bit more upright, they're able to deadlift a lot more weight. The other thing that can catch people, and this is a lot more rare, is when their hands are exceedingly small and grip strength becomes an issue. That tends to be an issue more for the intermediate to advanced level lifters. So people who are squatting double, triple body weight, whatever it is, and their squat kind of overtakes their deadlift. A lot of the time, small handies are the culprit there. But for most people we would coach on a regular basis, it's just weakness of the back. They don't have the back development done. A lot of the time when they try and develop the back, then they go about it without the kind of correct tools, and the back becomes incredibly aggravated. Maybe they'll even pull a muscle in their back, or their back might go into spasm, and then they're kind of afraid of the deadlift. And then that whole cycle perpetuates itself where deadlifts make my back sore, so I don't do deadlifts. but my back is sore because I don't do deadlifts. Whereas a lot of the time, if you're super mobile, you can sit and throw squats super easily. And you're probably just developing your legs there rather than developing your legs and your back. The thing about after heavy squats, my tendons near the top of my calf are sore for several days, prevents me from squatting more frequently. Any fixes? So proximal tendons or proximal pain in your calf can come from a number of things. The first thing is me and Garth can't answer injury questions. We're not doctors or physiotherapists or anything along those lines. A couple of places to look at though. So the first thing you need to look at is, do you have excessive tightness in the calf, and more so tightness around the ankle when you're with a bent knee, pushing your knee forward over your toes. So sit down into a squat, put a plate on top of your knee, push your knee forward. You can even have the other knee on the floor to give yourself a bit more torque and push forward even more. Do you have excessive tightness there? Does that calf cramp up then? If it does, it's a simple kind of mobility exercise. The second thing is, a lot of people will use knee sleeves, knee wraps, something like that, some sort of aid for their squats. A lot of time that can create a lot of tension around the back of the knee. So that would be my second piece of advice. Just take them off and see, does it go away after maybe 10 sets of squatting.
Know of any weightlifters have torn their ACL or had significant orthopedic injuries and came back at or above their competition level? So ACL tears are very, very rare. Ligament tears or tendon tears are very rare in weightlifting, and that's one of the benefits of weightlifting is the ballistic nature of weightlifting builds up once progressed accordingly is phenomenal for preventing those, because your body gets incredibly adaptive at extreme ranges of motion at high speeds, and the tendons and ligaments just respond really well to that. So you'll see that ACL tears are exceedingly rare in weightlifting. Now, orthopedic injuries are different and they're probably a bit more common. But the only person that springs to mind in terms of orthopedic injuries was the American weightlifter who broke both his forearm doing the strapped cleans. And I know he did come back and I think he exceeded them, but I don't see a lot. I can't think of a lot. To be honest, not saying you should do this, but if you had very significant injuries, there's things you can do now that you couldn't do before that would heal them a lot faster and a lot better in a lot quicker time. And you can go find those out from people, we've had in the podcast and stuff. But if it were to happen, now is the best time to be alive so far in human history to try and recover from those in an effective manner. Devin said Ritvar Suarez for some reason, who's a great lifter.
One thing I'll say about the ACL tears, I haven't had an ACL in my right knee for the entire time I've done weightlifting.
Yes.
And I've been absolutely grand. So don't worry too much about that. Maddest MF, born east of the Mississippi. Are you guys fans of the Swedish weightlifting team? I'm not really aware of a massive amount of Swedish weightlifters.
I don't think I am either, to be honest.
That's probably just ignorance on our behalf. Rafika says, what's your experience coaching athletes who suffered meniscus tears? Cheers. I've had a fair few athletes with meniscus tears or with meniscus tears who have recovered. The meniscus is a bit of a weird one. It can stay undiagnosed for a long time, but it can also stay under the radar, not a massive issue for a long time. And then suddenly something slips, maybe that rupture opens up a bit, or maybe we get a small bit of the meniscus shears off and sits in between that kind of gap. That's an issue. In the cases where I've had athletes who have been operated on and had that keyhole surgery done, it's been successful. And in cases where athletes have done their rehab, so gone through kind of 3 to 6 months of rehab, that's been successful. So I've had success on both ends with those. But I will say I've come across less than a handful of athletes who haven't treated their meniscus tear, and it's caused issues going forward. Eris Oosh says, lads, in Muay Thai, Muay Thai.
Why did you say it like that?
In Thai boxing.
Are you okay to
keep
rolling? Lads, I actually have to run, but enjoy the rest of the live stream with Dara.
In Muay Thai?
Are you going to be okay by yourself? I haven't even left yet.
Will getting stronger, strengthen my bone stroke tendons. Jesus, Garth, put that thing away.
You got to get some views.
Put that thing away. Okay, Okay, now that he's gone, we can talk about the important stuff. Will getting stronger strengthen my bones, stroke tendons, or stroke everything to make up for the fact that I started late to competing in or to the thigh guys thinking of competing and living in Malaysia. So it's class. So yeah, certainly increase in bone density, increase in tendon thickness tends to come along with resistance training. Now, with that being said, will it be the direct cause of you breaking or not breaking a tibia from a kick, or will it be the cause of you not having a ruptured eye socket from taking a kick? In those cases, it's incredibly difficult to know. And this goes along with basically all of the injury prevention data that's out there. We know certain things, right? So we know when we train a muscle, cross-sectional area of that muscle usually increases if we're doing the right stuff. We know when we put a bone under compression force, so more weight acting down through the bone, usually bone density increases. So that's people who have osteoporosis later in life will usually be told to go for a walk with weights on them, or just go for a walk with your body weight, and it can increase bone density. And we know that when the tendon is being used, we can increase tendon thickness and elasticity. Um, so with all of that being said, strength training and resistance training should increase bone density and should increase tendon thickness if we're doing the correct things. But it's very, very difficult to predict or to be very confident in your prediction when you're talking about injury prevention stuff. And that's the same reason why the back roller, foam rollers kind of had some slack a while back. It's why a lot of the big class action lawsuit about barefoot running, why that was there. Taking things and saying they help prevent injury is almost impossible, because long-term controlled studies, like, injuries are so unpredictable, they're so impractical to test in a study environment. So I would say it should help, but it's very, very difficult. Like, those guys and girls who are fighting from a much younger age, particularly something with like bone density, if somebody is kicking a heavy bag constantly from a very young age, they're going to develop some sort of coping mechanisms, and they'll have some sort of adaptations which will help the shin, help the ankle, help the foot, thicken up those bone structures, and make meaningful morphological changes. In the case of an adult starting, or I'm not sure when you started, those adaptations don't come quite so easily. And it's like, it's the reason all farmers have massive hands. Firstly, it's usually because they're farmers' sons or farmers' daughters, and those adaptations will have happened over the course of multiple generations. But also, it's because that work is being done from a much, much younger age. And those adaptations happen a lot easier at younger ages. Okay, Mark Olson says, evening, lads. RS Ush says, these guys kick metal poles since they were 5. Yeah, so that's exactly what we're talking about. That adaptation and those large-scale morphological changes take those early years, and they take a lot of years to happen. Ian Young says, morning, gents. Ian, it's 5:05 in the evening. I wonder where you are. Probably the States. Morning, gents. Walking the dogs and listening. That's nice to hear. So hit a pound for pound PR in the squat, 166 at 82 kilos. Nice. While on a temporary ringworm BJJ break. Those breaks are horrendous. This is coming from a chronic staph infection sufferer. Banana Bread says, regarding Yasmin Stevens and balance machine, she's using some balance improvement machines that look like a springboard version of the rubber ball. Is it effective? Any utility for judo stroke MMA? So balance training is a really interesting area of kind of sports science. And it's really interesting because you're looking at large motor skill development, fine motor skill development, and you're looking at neurological training or neurological adaptation happening on a kind of molecular level. So you're talking about, not only are you learning the skill of using that balance board or learning the skill of doing those single-legged skips with your eyes closed, we're also talking about physiological changes to the inner ear, physiological changes to the brain, physiological changes to your central and peripheral nervous system. all of these things are happening when we're training our balance. And so in the same way where you take someone and you might be teaching them how to throw an axe or serve with a tennis racket, and we think about the neural pathways changing or developing more neural pathways in the brain, when we're doing balance training, we're doing something very, very similar. Now, the hope when we do balance training is that we can then repurpose those neural pathways or have better utility of those neural pathways to be better balanced in our sporting situation. So let's take judo in this case. If you're a judoka and you're constantly doing throws, constantly sparring, whatever it is, you're constantly practicing the skills that are in judo, you're developing the balance there. Your skill of being better balanced and being able to be more agile. So agility is the ability to change direction or the rate at which we can change direction. In this case, agility and balance are inherently linked. Now, what we do when we use a balance board or any sort of balance apparatus like that is we're saying, I'm now practicing a separate skill, a skill which might be more demanding on my balance, a skill which might allow me to test my balance without necessarily injuring myself or becoming overly fatigued. If you imagine, you could be really, really good at balance if somebody constantly tries to foot sweep you all day and they're constantly throwing you and foot sweeping you. That would be great. You develop really good balance really quickly. But in that case, you'd need a sparring partner. You'd be destroyed. You'd probably have a few concussions. It'd be very difficult for you to train other parts of judo as well at the same time. Whereas what we're looking for is we're looking for some sort of sympathetic system here where I go and practice on a balance board or go and practice on a balance machine of some sort. And then I get to bring that in, and through some sort of associative means, I then have better balance in judo. It can certainly help and it can certainly work. I think overall balance training is definitely an undertrained aspect for a lot of combat sports athletes. Is it something I go to straight away? No, it probably isn't. It would definitely be a kind of tertiary training tool. But if you have a lot of time in your hands, if you have a few hours every day to spend on it, a balance board wouldn't be a bad thing. But it's what you're really looking for is that crossover into your sport, and it won't necessarily be a direct crossover. Okay, Lifting Matt says, what do you guys think of a potential Romaleos 5 release, and what kind of attributes would you want it to have? What I want them to do for the Romaleos 5 is to take the Romaleos 2s and just start making them all over again. That would be great. New colorways if they wanted, change the laces if they wanted. Don't change anything else because they'll definitely mess it up. Every step away from the Romaleo 2 was a mistake. Everything they did. They changed the strap, it was a mistake. They changed the heel height, it was a mistake. They changed the weight of the shoe, it was a mistake. They changed the material that the upper is made of, it was a mistake. They changed the footprint of the sole of the shoe, it was a mistake. So everything they've done so far has been a mistake, going from the 2s to the 3s to the 4s. So to be honest, I'd be very surprised if the Romeo 5 was good. But I certainly think going back to a full-size heel lift, not a kind of intermediate heel lift, would be good. I definitely think going to a slightly wider base of support with the sole will be good. Going to a slightly heavier shoe. And therein lies the issue with modern weightlifting shoes, or the most recent weightlifting shoes that are coming out, aside from one or two models, is that they try and be too light. They try and be too usable for CrossFitters and everyday gym goers. If you want to make a good weightlifting shoe, it has to be just a weightlifting shoe. Is a great question. Aziz says, how important are strong glutes for weightlifting and exercises which are useful? So strong glutes are incredibly important for weightlifting. They're not as important as strong quads and a strong back, but they are right up there. In terms of the movements or how you train for strong glutes, to be honest, most weightlifters are going to get absolutely all they need out of their squats and their pulls and the snatch and clean and jerks and the derivatives. And most weightlifters won't have to do any glute specific work. Where you might see some weightlifters doing glute specific work is if they have imbalances from side to side, in which case their unilateral work will probably take care of a lot of that. Front rack reverse lunges are great for it. Single leg glute bridge holds are really good. Anything along those lines, to be honest, most of the glute specific work is going to be unilateral and will be a combination of some rehab or prehab with some fixing of an imbalance in some way. But weightlifting, you're opening and closing that hip so much that the glutes are inherently involved in that. And so you don't need it, like you certainly don't need weighted hip thrusts, which, to be honest, in my opinion, are one of the most useless exercises you could do. Okay, Daniel Timmons says, podcasts have been great. Thanks as always for the great content, gents. Thanks very much, Daniel. The podcast series, we're delighted people like it. So we're lining up who we'll have as our next guests on. If there's people you'd like to see in the next series, let us know. We'll do our very, very best to get them on. Obviously, we're massively appreciative of everyone who came on for the last series. We have one podcast left to record this time round. And yeah, we have a few left to go up. So I'm glad everyone's enjoying it. Okay, AT Lifts says, does having higher hang numbers than off the floor mean there's a problem with the first pull? Not necessarily, no. A lot of weightlifters, depending on where you get a lot of your speed and power and how you develop it, a lot of weightlifters will have better numbers from the hang than they will from the floor. Particularly a lot of lifters who are in their first kind of 5 years of training will have better numbers from the hang than they will from the floor. It's not necessarily that you have something wrong with your first pull, although it's very likely a lot of us will have something wrong with our first pull. What's more likely the cause of that is there's just more time for things to go wrong. So if you imagine the bullet flying through the air as the analogy, when you're 100 meters away, all those environmental factors don't really matter. The bullet's there in 0.2 of a second. If you're 1,000 meters away, the bullet takes a few seconds to get there. And those environmental factors like wind, humidity, spin drift have an awful lot more influence on it. And so it really is the exact same thing with your first and second pull in the snatch. If I'm going from just below the hip, so midway down my thigh, if I'm going from there, a relatively high hang snatch position, I have very little time to mess it up on the way back up. So I can certainly mess it up. A load of people do. I might swing the bar out away from me. I might smash the bar at my hips. But most of the time, I'm going to be able to replicate that position quite easily. Once I start going further down and there's more time for those variables to come in, my hips coming too far forward, my weight being too far back, my shoulders coming back behind the barbell too early, in those cases, there's just more time for you to mess it up. And so in that case, the hangs, particularly the higher hangs, tend to be better. Sithar Training says, agree strongly, podcasts have been absolutely phenomenal. Thanks, Sithar. Really, really enjoy it. Dr. Demographics IE says, lads, looking any recommendations for buying stops such as EAAs? So much choice, so many bullshit claims, just want solid products and nothing else, or nothing overpriced. The real unfortunate thing with supplements right now is a lot of it's bunk. A lot of it's terrible quality or underdosed or maybe not what it says it is on the tin. It's really difficult to find supplements that are batch tested. In those cases, those supplements are significantly more expensive. I used to always be along the lines of you go to the biggest company and you pay a bit more money and you'll tend to get a bit better quality. And in the last 2 years, having spoken to many people and people who work for those big companies, it appears as though you're not getting what the price reflects, or you're not getting what the size of the establishment reflects. So it's unfortunate. This is the third time I've answered a question like this week with where do I get good quality subs? In terms of whey, Optimum Nutrition Gold Standard whey tends to be pretty good. Tends to be reasonably priced, although a bit more expensive than a lot of your bulk brands. In terms of creatine and stuff like that, the Pure creatine tends to be pretty good. But if you've listened to the Broderick podcast we did with him 2 years ago, apparently creatine comes from around 3 to 5 different factories, and all of it's basically made in those factories, and everything you pay more or less for creatine, if you're getting actual creatine, it's from the same place as the cheaper one or the more expensive one. So to be honest, I've never been more unsure of where to get supplements. Yeah, it's so difficult. If it's anything like dietary supplements or Nootropics Depot have their own in-house QC lab. We send our stuff to that lab, Omnipotent Labs or Omniant Labs in the US, fully controlled QC lab. They'll do full ID testing and full kind of potency testing on everything they have. So anything like taurine, caffeine, any of the nootropics we'll take on a regular basis all come from Nootropics Depot. But to be honest, in terms of buying your creatine or your bulk, like your large scale items, it's very, very difficult to say where to get them. Okay. Rahul Sangi says, sorry, now I'm after losing where we are. He says, why is my hanging snatch technique better than my full snatch technique? What can I do to fix it? I tend to smash the bar while doing the full snatch. So it's very much the thing I said for. Sorry, I can't find it. It's very much the same thing we talked about kind of 3 or 4 minutes ago with the hang snatch numbers being bigger than the full snatch numbers or numbers from the floor. The reason you tend to be, or you're probably smashing it when it's coming off the floor, is the bar is probably out in front of you too much as you're bringing it off the floor. So a simple way of thinking about this is imagine you from the side and imagine your foot or the sole of your shoe as a frame of reference. As you're doing the hang, you're probably doing a much better job of keeping it over the sole of your shoes or over that base of support. As you're pulling it off the floor, it's likely the bar is drifting forward during your first pull. This might be due to hips being too low in the start, knees too far forward in the start, shoulders too loose or weak and not able to maintain that strong position in the start. Barbell not moving rearwards as its initial direction of movement. There's a host of reasons the bar moves forward off the floor. It's the biggest issue you can have in your snatch is bar bumping forward off the floor. Even if it's a slight bump forward and you work really hard to fix that, that bar is going to be drifting forward the whole way for the rest of your pull. And what tends to happen is because there's forward momentum as the barbell passes your knees and you finish your first pull, you then have to do a big job of pulling the bar back into you for your second pull. And that basically brings your hips and body forward into the bar. Your hips have to come forward more. They have more distance to come forward, so it's more momentum, and you end up smashing the bar with your hips. But it's difficult to know without a video. Like, we're constantly asking people who are on the app or on the programs to send in videos every single time there's a coaching stream up, and we'll have a look at them. But that's likely what's happening. Jamie Williams says, hi lads, looking at becoming a horse to pack on some strength and size before prepping for my first half Ironman this year. Can you swap out strict press for bench press? If so, how would you go about it? Yeah, you can just swap it 1 for 1. The reps are going to be pretty well suited. Swapping strict press for bench press in a lot of cases won't work great because we'll use slightly different rep ranges, slightly less volume on the strict press. In this case, on that program, it will work quite well. If your bench is very important to you, though, and what do I mean by that? If your bench press 1RM matters to you a lot, like I assume in this case, you're prepping for a half Ironman or whatever, and your rack position isn't great, so you don't want to be strict pressing, or the movement of strict pressing isn't great for you, and you just want to bench press instead. In that case, swap it in, enter in your bench press 1RM where it says strict press, and every time that pops up, you can do your bench pressing instead. Now, if you're in the case where you're like, no, I want to do benching because I want the bigger bench 1RM, and the bench 1RM is important to me, in that case, what you're better off doing is you take the Becoming a Horse program. You can add the Seek bench program for free concurrently. So when you're in the app, you just set up the Becoming a Horse program. Then you go into the program library. You set up the bench press program. And then every time you have strict presses, you just take the strict presses out and you sub in the bench press work instead. So the bench press program is very, very well tailored for increasing bench press 1RM and will do a better job of bumping that number up massively. Okay, Baddest MF is back again. He says, are you guys fans of Swedish athletics, for example, weightlifting or wrestling? To be honest, I've no experience or exposure to it. And as I said earlier, purely through ignorance. We don't have a lot of exposure to Scandinavian sports in Ireland for one reason or another. Grandmaster Ferg said, thoughts on PEDs in professional football / soccer. You'd assume it would be rampant given the amount of money in the sport and extent of drug testing, which is zero. But there never seems to be controversy about it. Yeah, it's absolutely rampant. The reason there's no controversy is because it's all in-house. It's all in-house. When you see people getting popped, and this might bring one particular case to mind, when you see people getting popped in soccer, they're tending to get a slap on the wrist for something else. So you probably know what I'm talking about there or what I'm alluding to. But the use of PEDs in soccer is like every other sport. It's just as dirty as everyone else. Duane Conroy says, get laser eye surgery, man. Life was changed. It was a life changer for me. Yeah, I'm definitely going to get laser eye surgery. I want to get that super vision, the 25/20 vision. Okay, Rob says, love your content. Thanks for that, Rob. OG Morgan Freeman says, running becoming a harsh program, loving it so far. Want to replace full cleans with power cleans. Will it make a difference? Also, want to add some hamstring curls. Think it's a good idea. So you can swap those power cleans in there straight away. Same reps, same sets. Just make sure the 1RM number reflects the 1RM of your power cleans to make sure it's tracking. If you've any issues on that, just into the contact form in the app, or else just pop us an email, seekastrength@gmail.com. We'll get you sorted. We might need to regenerate that. But yeah, you can definitely swap those in. That's no issue at all. In terms of adding some hamstring curls, you could certainly do that. You can definitely add hamstring curls. Be wary though. A lot of us don't have the strongest hamstrings. I see Blaine McConnell is in the chat here, and Blaine definitely has strong hamstrings. But if you're in the cohort of people where maybe you haven't trained your hamstrings massively, maybe you haven't done hamstring Nordics all that much, maybe you've been doing a lot of squatting and not a lot of posterior work, or even when you do posterior work, it might be very back dominant or very glute dominant. Be wary with the hamstrings. Hamstrings tear a lot. And so start off slowly, start with some isometrics. Isometrics on a hamstring Nordic setup tend to be really, really good. Then you can slowly go into those hamstring Nordic negatives. So you can certainly add them, but I would say just be wary with that. Okay. Where am I? Sorry, now my chat keeps going back to the bottom every time a comment comes up. Blaine McConnell says, what's up, fellas? How are you, Blaine? I think everyone deeply enjoyed you on the podcast. So thanks very much for that. I hope training is going well. KSB says, I'm using a trap bar to deadlift. In brackets, he's a rugby player. You weren't huge fans of that bar in a video 2 years ago. I'm noticing good strength gains without the problems I had with a normal bar probably form. So look, trap bars are super useful. Trap bars are super useful for people in your situation. Rugby players don't have great mobility. Most of us have plenty of bangs and injuries that limit our ability to maybe get down into a good position with the barbell on the floor, or maintain strong upper back positions, or maintain good neutral shoulder posture. Trap bars are super useful. I have only a handful of athletes using trap bars. Maybe that's so reasons they use them. Maybe it's like you, in the case where there's injuries, they're dinged up, can't hit the position. They're never going to be able to hit that position right now, and it will take a lot of work for us to enable them to hit that position. So it's not efficient. So we use a trap bar, or we use some other implement. Second case, they might have a lot of other training going on, and the thing that comes to mind here is a BJJ athlete. A lot of other training going on. They're only in the gym once or twice a week. They need to get a lot of bang for their buck. The best thing for those people to do is put a lot of weight on a trap bar deadlift and get that large neurological drive in a bipedal movement. That's super, super important. Just getting people lifting heavy weights. The last thing then is if we're using the trap bar for some sort of super specific case. Um, there's a lot of really weird trap bar movements out there, but they're really like they're a useful tool in the right setting. Do you get slightly better development of the lower back and the upper back with the conventional deadlift? Yes. Do you get development or better development of the legs and the glutes with a back squat? Yes. Is it a good halfway between the two? Kind of. It is useful. And the other reason a lot of the time we don't see trap bar deadlifts being done over a massive amount is just down to equipment restrictions. So, like if I'm training a rugby team, we might have 3 trap bars in a really well equipped gym. You probably need 6 stations to get the whole team working through there constantly, or 5 stations to get a whole team of 20 guys moving through and getting good training done. So in that case, trap bars are out. We don't have enough trap bars. You're not going to use them for half the people and not for the others. And then in cases like us, for myself and Owen, a lot of people who are training under us are training in either team gyms or their home gyms or some sort of gym and like a work gym or the gym close to where they work. In that case, they don't have direct access to all the equipment. So in our case, we like the equipment to be standard equipment, not asking people to go out and have to get really weird gear or anything like that. So yeah, there's a host of reasons why trap bars aren't ideal every time, but they are useful in certain cases. Billy, my homie, just sent a super, like he says, coffee. Billy, thank you so much for that. We really appreciate it. Okay, where were we? So, NMC, the best way to contact us is in the app. You just go top right hand corner. You see there's a little person. And then down the bottom of that page, it says, please use the contact form in case of any questions or feedback. So in your app on your home screen, top right-hand corner, there's a little person. Then bottom of that, it says contact form. You just click in there and we'll get on to that straight away. Okay, where were we? Tom Miller says, to clarify, wait, sorry, I missed Tom Miller's comment. Oh my God, I'm in the wrong place altogether. Where am I? Crawler23 says, any tips or exercises or routines to improve speed and getting under the bar in the clean and jerk? Yeah, so the biggest thing with the clean is that in the snatch, the most important thing is putting the barbell over our head in the correct position. In the clean, the most important thing is getting underneath the barbell. So the biggest error, or one of the biggest errors that people make and why they're so slow getting under the bar, is they'll stay in that fully extended position. They really, really extend and do everything to get up and get that bar as high as possible. And then the bar ends up being too high. It loops around and crashes down onto them. You can see any number of international weightlifters that are quite possible who overpull the bar in the clean. Look at somebody who does it really well in terms of the right amount of extension and all the focus on getting under the bar as fast as you can. Anton Plesnoy is probably the best case for that. So watch Anton, make sure you're not overextending. Make sure at no point you're throwing your shoulders back at the top of the clean. So a lot of people, as they extend, they really throw their shoulders back. You don't want that. You just want the right amount of extension, and then you want the main focus on pulling under the bar as quickly as you possibly can. Okay, Craig Nesbitt says, any good venison or game suppliers you'd recommend? I actually don't know. I don't know what the trading name of the game dealer is. I know Premier Game Dealer. Just look up Premier Game Venison Ireland. To be honest, a lot of it is going to be really high quality. We have a massive abundance of deer here, so it's going to be pretty hard to get bad quality stuff. But I actually don't, Craig. In this case, In this case, I have no idea because I've never bought deer meat. Yet I eat it pretty much every day. Werp gave a super like and says, just dropping in to pitch some cash at the plant. Keep up the good works. The plant currently has a box of Seek Asleep and a mannequin on it. So we'll give it a watering soon, going along with Tom Miller's suggestions. Thanks so much for that, guys. Okay. Rob Poutney says, what's your guys' opinion on the importance of the start position in terms of power you can generate from the second pull? So I'll give you my opinion, but it's basically the same as Garth's opinion. The first pull, or the job of the first pull in weightlifting, is very much to make sure we're in the correct position to start the second pull. So the job of the first pull is that we have an effective handover as we go through knee passage to make sure the barbell is in the correct position, we're in the correct position. So the mechanics of our ankles, knees, hips, torso, and shoulders are all in the correct position. And then to make sure the bar has sufficient momentum and sufficient speed as it's coming into that in the correct direction. So you probably talk about velocity, speed in the correct direction as it's coming into the second pull. So with our first pull, you rarely make the lift with your first pull, but you very commonly miss the lift because of the first pull. So if you get what I mean, we're probably only getting around 10 or 15% of our total speed or our uh total eventual speed from the first pull. But a lot of the time we miss lifts because of our setup and our first pull being poor. So it is important. It tends to be the first thing we fix is someone's setup. Then we tend to fix their first pull and then we move upwards from there. If we're coaching someone and coaching them in person to lift for the first time, we'll use a bottoms down method. But when we're giving feedback, we tend to do start of the lift or floor up method. Okay, Mandy says 500-pound squat on 5-minute mile was one of my favorite series. Thanks for that, Mandy. So we will be doing those again. Tom Miller said, I did a CrossFit WOD today that involves squatting 5x5. I kept it very light. I presume I am probably okay to crack on with the day 2 RTA. And then he says, to clarify, week 4, day 2 of the RTA 2. Obviously not ideal. Absolutely are okay to crack on. In those cases, if you're training in a CrossFit gym or an S&C facility where you don't have full control over your conditioning work or any of those, just make sure we stay reasonable with the loading of it and you'll be absolutely okay to crack on. In that case, Tom, if you wake up in the morning and you're to do week 4, day 2 tomorrow and you're absolutely haggard, then don't do it. Just take an extra day, take an extra 2 days, however long it takes for you to feel normal again. Obviously, don't jump straight back in, but you should be absolutely A-okay to continue on. Okay. So, just we're coming up to the hour mark here. I'm just going to pick a few questions. Eric X says, hi, gents. Running the RTA 1, so Road to Anywhere squat program number 1. Enjoying it so far. Good showing on week 4, day 2. Nice. Got sick. Took a few days off. So I hope you did well on the week 4, day 2 before you got sick. And week 5, day 1 was much harder than anticipated. Should I proceed as written or rerun the week? So this is a great question, Eric. It happens pretty much everyone over the course of some training program, as over the course of their years and years of training. Our rule of thumb here, right, is if you basically mirror the amount of time off with the amount of regression you have. So in your case, you had just finished week 4, day 2, and you got sick. In that case, if you took a week off because of being sick, you regress 1 week. If you take 2 weeks off, you regress 2 weeks. And in the case where you go more than 2 weeks off of training, you go all the way back to the start of the block. So usually a month or 2 months back. This gives us a really, really good and consistent method for bringing back people into training. If we were there with you in person, would we slightly tailor it or sharpen it up a small bit more? Yes. But this will work 99.9% of the time. So in your case, you had just finished week 4, day 2. I would go back and I would do week 3, day 2 again, then week 4, day 1, then week 4, day 2. That's going to be your best method to get back in. It's unfortunate when we miss time off. A lot of time people feel like it's regression, it's really holding you back. As long as you just get back in there with a smile on your face and keep working hard, you'll get just as good results. Okay. So thanks very much for all the supportive comments as well, guys. Just scrolling down here. Okay, last question. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Sorry, I've butchered your name. Do you have any tips on how to strengthen the hook grip? So, the big thing with the hook grip and why it's slightly weird and why I want to answer this question is that the hook grip for almost everyone is an exercise in pain tolerance. And most of us, as our hook grip becomes stronger, we are essentially just able to block out the pain a bit more. The first 10 days to 2 weeks of hook gripping tends to be incredibly uncomfortable for most people. And so, in that case, I recommend all of those people going and buying a roll of zinc oxide tape, just a normal white zinc oxide tape. Don't get the stretchy thumb tape, the fancy thumb tape. What that does, as it forms, so it's like KT tape, as it forms around your finger, it doesn't give you the same kind of alleviation of that knurling pain, right? So normal zinc oxide tape, you do a few wraps around your thumbs and you do that for a week or for 2 weeks. Then you slowly bring out the amount of wraps. So it might have been full thumb coverage. Then you just go between the first and second knuckle on your thumb. And then eventually you wean yourself off all of it. The unfortunate thing is that the only thing that's going to make that hook grip feel better is you just using the hook grip more. And it is just, you'll have to just keep at it, keep going with it. A lot of the time, it's actually the skin on the inside of our thumb here is very, very, very poorly conditioned because we're rarely pushing against that. So unless you're shoveling or driving a pickaxe, you're not really going to be taxing that skin here. Most of the skin on our palms and our fingers and even the upper part of our thumb will tend to be well developed from gripping things, pull up bars, normal knurling on a bar, all that. But this inner part of the thumb tends to be quite sensitive, and that inner part takes a lot of the torque, particularly as we twist that hook grip and tighten our hands into it. So, first thing, get some tape, use the chalk, and then slowly wean yourself off it. Second thing, understand that you're just going to have to give it the time to get stronger. Now, the last thing I'm going to say, and I'm just going to grab a prop for this. Okay, I don't have a prop in easy reach here. I'll see. I don't have anything in my pocket. Okay, I'm going to use these two fingers as a prop for the barbell. Now, as most beginners grab the barbell, they wrap their thumb up and around the bar and then they wrap their fingers around it. Your thumb, this top piece at the top of your thumb, this piece here, if you can see it, that's the wrong side. This piece at the top of your thumb, this should run perpendicular to the bar, and the ridge of it should be just over the top of the bar. So the bar should be sitting here, and then I wrap my thumb over the top. It is not a thing of wrapping your thumb like a strap over the bar and then grabbing it. That's going to crush your thumb. You wrap your thumb like this around the bar. That little knob here is going to hold most of the weight, and then you grip down. Depending on the size of your hand, you might be able to grip it with this wrinkle of your first knuckle. If you've big hands, you might be able to get the second wrinkle or the second knuckle on your carpals around that. So it takes time. Make sure you're gripping it like this and not with a straight thumb wrapping over the top. That's probably a very, very weird image for people to watch without the commentary going on behind it. Okay. Guys, thanks so much for everyone who tuned in. Thank you so much for people who super liked it. We never ever ask people to do it, but thank you again for that. If you've got questions about the programs, questions about the app, seekastrength@gmail.com is the best place to get to us. If you're on the app, you can just go top right hand corner, click on the little person, then bottom of that, you'll see contact form. Shoot us an email there, and that's great to go. We'll be back very, very soon. As always, thank you.